You're listening to the Modern Mainframe, BMC's intelligent C optimization and transformation podcast, covering the latest trends and issues in the mainframe and how BMC AMI solutions can help you make change your competitive advantage. Hi there, welcome to the Modern Mainframe. I'm Matt Dallaire. Today we're discussing mainframe security, specifically machine identity management. Our guests today are Venafi Vice President of Security Strategy and Threat Intelligence, Kevin Bocek, and BMC Director of Worldwide Cybersecurity Sales, Ken Chism. Ken, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Matt, it's great to be here.
The 2022 BMC Mainframe Survey showed that for the third year in a row, security and compliance ranked as the top priority of respondents. An important aspect of this, of course, is the authentication of a user identity, with zero trust security models gaining in popularity. But just as important as secure user credentials, if not more important, is machine identity. In today's digital economy, organizations are continually releasing and updating mobile and web applications that touch devices across multiple networks and platforms. In this kind of environment, it's crucial that the identity of these machines is verified. But as touchpoints grow in numbers, so does the complexity of managing security certificates and keys. So Kevin, why are certificate and key management important for enterprises? What are some of the risks involved in improperly managing machine identity?
Well, we think about the world that we live in. There are two actors. There are people and there are machines. People, we've got customers, we've got team members, business partners. And in the machine world, wow, it's everything from the mainframe all the way out to the edge to the customer. And more, of course, business. What makes the competitive advantage in business? There are only so many customers that we can acquire. We've got amazing team members, but again, there's only so many of them. But machines and the data that they are processing and using, being trained on, is what brings the competitive advantage. And of course, we have to be able to authenticate machines, whether that is a workload that's running in the mainframe or it's a workload that's running in the cloud. We have to know if that is good, bad, friend, or foe, just like we do our customers. So that's where machine identity management comes in. And of course, we use one of the most popular, which probably everyone will know well, is the TLS certificate. You might not have gotten up close and cuddly with them, but when you see the padlock glow in your web browser, you can go there and check that out right now. That means that your software, your web browser, your mobile device has authenticated the machine on the other end. Well, if there's one place that's really, really important, it's certainly in the mainframe environment, because it's the most sensitive data, most sensitive transactions. We have to be able to authenticate and have privacy. And that's what machine identities, or what specifically things like TLS keys and certificates do. So we have to manage those well. Unfortunately, again, probably the audience has observed over the years, maybe we haven't done that so well. You've probably seen where some web service that you want to get to is down. It says you can't trust that website. That's because most likely a certificate has expired. Same thing happens in the mainframe world. And wow, when that happens, when a certificate expires, which these do, because they're not being managed well, business stops. And we also then have a need to drive greater efficiency, because there's more and more software, whether that's out to the cloud or certainly in the mainframe world. And there are more of these machine identities that are more critical. So we have to drive automation, getting staff that know how to work with things like TLS certificates, PKI, machine identities. They're not growing on trees. So we have to drive automation for efficiency. And of course, what I think about most often, of course, is our adversaries. Our adversaries are looking to become authenticated. They want to look like trusted, authenticated machines on our network. And just saw yesterday the CrowdStrike threat report, which our adversaries, they've shifted now from malware to driving attacks on identities, and machine identities are spot on. So all of that is why we have to get machine identity management under control in the mainframe world to protect our businesses, to keep it running, to make the cost of running the business actually manageable.
So how does machine identity management fit into zero trust security?
Well, zero trust, of course, starts with authentication. We cannot we cannot just have any machine, any user accessing sensitive data, transactions. So the foundation of zero trust is authenticate everything. And of course, whether that's a software workload, a batch process that's happening in the mainframe world all the way out to the cloud, it starts with the machine identity. And that's the foundation of everything zero trust.
So manual certificate management is, to say the least, unwieldy, right? What are some of the drawbacks to attempting to do all this manually?
Well, of course, there are only so many experts out there in your organization that, first of all, know how to try and manage machine identities. They are not growing on trees. And what we see is that oftentimes organizations have attempted to use things like spreadsheets to try and keep track of them. And then the day that a team member goes on vacation, doesn't have a spreadsheet, you get something like an outage. And of course, just trying to keep up with that spreadsheet then becomes humanly impossible. What we also know too is that we make errors, humans, and trying to do something incredibly complex gets really, really error prone. So a combination of poor judgment, errors, just not being able to keep up just snowballs. And we see this problem come to a head in customers, and I'm sure the audience has seen this amongst their own teams too. And it's really, really frustrating because, of course, this is something that can be prevented. It's something actually that we can get great efficiencies at.
What are some of the strategies companies can adapt to mitigate these pains?
Yeah, so if we think about the outcomes that organizations want to get to, they don't want to have outages. They want to get increasing levels of efficiencies. They want to reduce, risk that surface area of attack. So the way that organizations then look at, they can measure that is A, we've got zero outages from expired certificates. B, we know where all of these machine identities live. C, we've got policies in place that actually control the way that these machine identities are being used, are being replaced. D, then we're actually enforcing those policies. So we actually can measure the policies, we can measure the enforcement, and of course, the number of automated machine identities, can we measure that? Because when we can add this all up, we've got the observability, the intelligence, we've got the automation. Now we've got the confidence. We can actually validate. We can report to the CISO. We can report to the board. I can answer any auditor's questions that they might ask, and they are asking about the use of TLS certificates, machine identities, everywhere in the business, especially in the mainframe.
So Kevin, this is Ken. I have a question for you. At least on the mainframe side, I'm seeing the number of certificates that are actually managed by the mainframe team increasing year over year. And they tell me it's because of additional pressure from the security and risk team. Can you give us a little insight onto that increase in the number of certificates?
Yeah, well, the security teams, of course, and some of the audience may work closely with it, know, of course, the drive to zero trust, which is every workload, every process, every machine must be authenticated. Therefore, it must have a machine identity. As well, the drive for auditability is likely leading to questions. Are we using certificates for authentication? All of this adding up. And then, I even know organizations are, certainly they're driving virtualization further in mainframe. They're even driving Kubernetes clusters in the mainframe. All of this is just driving up the number of certificates. And what I would say is that, if you ask any individual team member how many certificates are actually being used, it's likely one person will say, yeah, in my spreadsheet, I've got 100. But then you ask another, I've got 30. And when you actually start to get intelligence about the breadth and depth, well, that number has gone up beyond what anyone would have thought of. Generally, what we see amongst customers is that number that someone might have thought was X is actually, in fact, in reality, 10X. And all of that then can contribute to this much larger size of machine identities like TLS certificates in mainframe environments than were expected.
And what about the length of time that certificates are available? I hear things about, oh, we used to have certificates that lasted 2 years. Now it's 1 year. Now we're getting pressure for 6 months. Do you see that as well?
Well, I'm sure this audience, if they've ever encountered things like TLS certificates, may have encountered them of lifetimes of decades. I have to say, when I started working I worked in a financial services organization in Stuttgart, Germany. Yeah, these were measured definitely in years, if not decades. And the drive to decrease the lifetimes of these certificates is to drive down, of course, the opportunity for an attacker, that window of opportunity. Just like, well, you don't keep your passwords for authentication for years now. You don't keep machine identities around for years. And so that time to live or that lifetime is decreasing. We've seen in the public certificate world, which right now is running in your web browser, we've seen that gone down from 3 to 2 to 1 year. And now Google is going to force that down to 90 days. Now, again, that's publicly out on the internet. But again, why is all of that being done? It's because the adversary, because of the risks. And the security teams are now also driving those same set of rules and policies inside the business. Because as I said before, as CrowdStrike just reported in their 2023 threat report, the adversary shifting their techniques, they're going for identities, including machine identities. So we've got to drive down that time to live. But that creates a problem though, Ken, because what happens then is that drive for shorter lifetimes now makes teams run around. Can I renew? Can I replace within that window whatever the security team is giving me? And that creates a problem. That's just a time bomb waiting to happen, which creates loads of friction then. I know with the mainframe teams here, wow, that creates loads of burden. Security teams are bringing a policy to us, and that's creating burden where we haven't had that. Does the security team actually understand all that we've got to do, the capabilities that we've got? That just creates friction.
That echoes exactly what I've heard from the mainframe teams, Kevin. Thanks.
So, Kevin, can you tell us a little more specifically about Venafi and how Venafi helps?
Yeah. So Venafi is a leader in machine identity management, and we help organizations, financial services, retailers, insurers, telcos, logistics companies, software developers get the observability, the intelligence, the automation around all these different types of machine identities. Whether that's a TLS certificate that's running in the cloud or working with BMC in the mainframe, whether that's the machine identities that authenticate code that gets run, whether that's the machine identities like SSH keys and certificates, or especially now in the cloud native world with Kubernetes, all of those certificates that say what's good or bad, is this my cloud, my cluster, my Kubernetes cluster or not? And we do that, again, as you would imagine, helping, as I shared before, organizations. First, you have to know the problem that you've got. Where are all of these machine identities? What are the teams that are using these TLS certificates, SSH keys, code signing certificates, these cloud native identities? Then driving automation so that, again, it's not people that we're dependent upon. It's not creating friction, more problems. We're actually driving automation so that the whole life cycle is automated and governed. And now we've got higher degrees of confidence and authentication. We've got much more success in terms of no outages, in terms of our zero trust strategy. And we've got a whole different set of risks, and just teams are happier. That's something I know that That might not be on the security team's measurement when they are using Venafi, but wow, we see it. Just teams are so much more happier and successful. And we do that with software that's run throughout our customer's data center and drives that automation, reaches into those environments, as well as cloud software as a service that you can use anywhere. And yeah, it's been a great experience too. BMC are experts in mainframe and working with the team and really learning about the opportunities and then how our two software come together to help our customers be successful.
Speaking of, Ken, can you tell us a bit about the BMC AMI Enterprise Connector for Venafi and how it enhances the Venafi offering?
Sure. Well, one of the things you may have just gathered from Kevin's comments is Venafi is really designed for large organizations with many certificates that need to be managed. Additionally, if you have a mainframe, you're probably a large organization with a lot of certificates and machine identity management issues. So that is really why we built this technology partnership with Venafi, because our customer base is very similar in the magnitude of problems and challenges that they try and tackle. So the real goal of extending Venafi to the mainframe is to allow the teams that use Venafi for their machine identity management to simply add the mainframe onto the list of machines that need to be updated when certificates are renewed or when certificates are initially generated. If we can automate the entire process for Venafi's teams who use that technology to manage machine identities, it not only creates less friction, as Kevin was talking about, it creates less need for mainframe skilled people to actually do the work on the mainframe that needs to be done to implement certificates. Our goal is to create an environment where you really don't have to have hands-on keys for mainframe talent to implement certificates on the mainframe when you're using Venafi. We want to automate that whole process. It not only reduces the need for mainframe talent, but it reduces risk, as Kevin was mentioning before.
I'd imagine it improves efficiency as well because you're not spending time in that background work.
Yeah, and one of the things I would state, I was at a financial institution yesterday and asked the person who actually does the commands on the mainframe to implement the certificate, how would your life be if this were all automated for you? If you were on, they happen to have RACF and ACF2, those two different technologies require two different command sets from skilled mainframe personnel. And it was a sigh of relief to even think about not having to do that manual process over and over and over again. Another financial institution that I'm aware of has 3 people full-time implementing certificates on the mainframe in order to keep up with the workload. It's a painful process to watch, and it's even more painful for me to think about doing it all day long, every day, and they have to work extra hours just to keep up.
It's really an amazing business case, Ken, because if you can think about it, you can drive that efficiency and you can reduce risk, whether that's risk from errors or risk from the adversary. So it's a great business case to present. It's one of those that you can measure and is super tangible.
Ken, what control does a mainframe team have over what changes Venafi makes and when they're made?
One of the things I would say about mainframe teams is they pay very close attention to detail. These mainframes are processing millions of transactions, and it's their jobs to make sure that the mainframes continue to operate. In order to do that, they pay very close attention to detail. So even though we work with Venafi to automate the process, there are really a couple of things that we do to make sure that the mainframe team is aligned with that automation. The first thing that we do is we allow the mainframe team the ability to determine when the certificates actually get implemented. Some organizations may implement certificates at 3 o'clock on Saturday morning, others 4 o'clock on Sunday morning. Typically, they'll choose a time that's a low period for activity on their mainframe. So we want the mainframe team to control the actual timing of the implementation and validation of those certificates. But the other thing that we do for the mainframe team is we create a complete audit trail so that they can see every action that was taken. They actually see the RACF command that was issued, or the ACF2 or top secret commands that were issued. They see the responses back from the ESM, so they get to see the exact detail, which, by the way, are the commands that they would issue manually. So they get to see that we are doing in an automated fashion what they do in a manual fashion, and they confirm that what we're doing is exactly what needs to be done.
And of course, too, then on the other side, the security team gets back that positive confirmation too in their reporting. So the days of having to go and ask and try and communicate between teams, yeah, that's automated.
Right, and it breaks down those silos. With having the same tool across platforms, helps the security team so that there's not a separate time-consuming process for the mainframe.
That's right. In fact, it maintains continuity. The Venafi application maintains continuity across different silos and across different platforms. This morning, I was talking with another financial institution who asked that specific question for my security reporting. How do I tell that my certificates have been implemented and validated in a timely fashion? Who authorized it? When was it authorized? And the Venafi application, the Venafi solution, contains all of that information so that they can provide to the auditing team exactly who authorized, when it took place, everything they need in order to validate that they're doing everything they should be doing.
So Ken, how can organizations get started using the BMC AMI Enterprise connector for Venafi?
The solution is actually quite straightforward between Venafi and BMC. If the customer already has Venafi up and running, we provide an adapter to Venafi's platform that connects the mainframe directly into Venafi. The work that's done is actually on Venafi, but the implementation on the mainframe is done by our technology. Within a matter of days, our technology is up and running and integrated with the Venafi solution. For organizations that don't have Venafi, but are very concerned about their mainframe certificates because the volumes are increasing, we actually work with Venafi to help those organizations as well review a complete solution for machine identity across their overall enterprise that includes the mainframe. It's really a great working relationship between Venafi and BMC, not only from a technical standpoint, but from a how do we go to market and face our customers perspective.
And the great thing, of course, too, Ken, is then from a technology perspective, the mainframe team are working with BMC and technology, of course, that are performing those operations inside the mainframe environment. And the security teams that are using Venafi, those systems actually don't reach in. The BMC connectors performing all of those operations. So the technologies stay on the two sides where each team's have well-established operations. So that's that also that friction or concern that's really natural just melts away.
Okay, I'm going to put both of you on the spot here. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners? Kevin, I'll start with you.
Well, this is it's so fun, to be here with Ken and talk to the audience. I don't know how many times participants talk about they're having fun, but it is fun because we get to talk together about these changes that we help make in organizations. Again, not only that bring a business change, but actually for teams that actually bring smiles and people are happier. So, it's great to be here and talk about it. And I'd say, yeah, machine identity management, it's not optional. Your organization is already doing it. Yeah, and work with BMC to make those changes and to get started.
Ken?
I'm going to echo a little bit about what Kevin said about fun. It's not fun working late in the evening. It's not fun working on the weekend. Mainframe teams have a lot of work that they need to do, and their organizations ask a lot of them. And when we can relieve people of those mundane but still very painful tasks and refocus them on things that are more productive for their organizations, everybody wins. And to hear those sighs of relief when they see all I had to do was push a button in Venafi and my task was done, it's rewarding because mainframe's talent is difficult to find and mundane tasks are not fun. There are other things that are more fun to do and that add more value for organizations. So it can actually be fun.
Well, I had fun listening. This was a great conversation. Kevin, Ken, thanks again for joining us today.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having us.
As usual, thank you to everyone listening. I'll put links for more information in the show notes, so be sure to check those out. And we'll talk to you next time on the Modern Mainframe. Take care. You're listening to the Modern Mainframe, BMC's intelligent C optimization and transformation podcast, covering the latest trends and issues in the mainframe and how BMC AIME solutions can help you make change your competitive advantage.